And I loved it so much that I then just started making a bunch of changes in Berlin that would allow me to move here permanently. Is this gem? Honestly, I didn't know it existed when I moved here. It's this incredibly futuristic research center right on the river. It's between Belém and Algiers. And it's modern and just has these incredible views. And it's one of the world leading neuroscience programs in the world.
On this week's episode, I'm joined by Nina Patrick. Nina is a scientist and an entrepreneur specializing in healthcare, startups, longevity, psychedelics, and digital therapeutics. Nina is originally from the US and after living and spending a lot of time in Germany, decided to move somewhere warmer and has been living in Portugal ever since. We discuss, amongst other things, why she chose to move to Portugal, some of the differences between Portugal and Germany, not just in the weather, but the people, the culture, and the pace of life. Nina talks about her work and some of the amazing advancements that Portugal is making in healthcare, the fight against chronic diseases, oncology, and neuroscience. And Nina talks about what is a blue zone and how Portugal could be the next one, and why Portugal just may be the perfect place to grow old. For those of you listening, head over to our YouTube channel to watch some of this episode. And for those of you watching, click down below and subscribe. And for the full podcast episode, go to Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now over to my conversation with Nina. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, The Simple Life. And I'm delighted to be joined here by Nina Patrick. We're going to talk about chilled out things, nothing too medical. But why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about you?
Yeah, no problem. So I am a scientist turned entrepreneur, innovator, and writer. I think it's best just to sort of tell the story of how I got here. I have a PhD in pharmaceutical science, and I studied epigenetics and did a small project also with psychedelics. So both of those things now I write about in my weekly newsletter, Nina's Notes. Epigenetics is now very much tied with aging, so that's the link with longevity. I worked briefly in San Francisco in biotech startups, and then started my own business, an at-home diagnostics company in Berlin in 2019. So I ran that company for 4 years before moving to Portugal. And now I lead innovation at a research institute here called the Champalamo Center for the Unknown. And I help scientists think more commercially about their research and commercialize that research into products. Our two research focuses are oncology and neuroscience.
Why Portugal? How did that all start for you? Tell us about your first visits to the country.
So I was living in Berlin the last 4 years, and I'm originally from the West Coast of the United States. So I was born in San Francisco. I grew up in Las Vegas, and I'm used to sun, 360 days out of the year. And Berlin was a really tough place for me weather-wise. I was there also during the pandemic, and it was just cold and gray, and the people are cold and gray, and it's a tough place in the wintertime. And so last year, I said, no more. It's like life is too short to winter in Berlin. And I came to Portugal and lived here from January to April. So for 4 months to escape the winter.
Okay.
And I loved it so much that I then just started making a bunch of changes in Berlin that would allow me to move here permanently. And so I moved here permanently in January of this year. So just about a year.
I mean, have your expectations been met?
Absolutely. I'm so much happier here than I was in Berlin for a variety of reasons. But I think the weather is a huge factor. Being able to go outside, spend time in nature, not be kind of confined to the indoors for literally half the year is really very good for your mental health. The center that I work for, the Champalamo Center for the Unknown, let's just let that sink in. That's like the coolest name for a research institute of all time. Is this gem? Honestly, I didn't know it existed when I moved here. And it's this incredibly futuristic research center right on the river. It's between Belém and Algiers. And it's modern and just has these incredible views, and it's one of the world leading neuroscience programs in the world. We have neuroscience, and we also have oncology, And we also have a cancer clinic as part of the research institute. So we do research and treat patients in pancreatic cancer, colorectal cancer, prostate, and breast cancer. And we're one of the leading pancreatic cancer centers in the world as well. So it's quite unbelievable. And our clinic is open to patients internationally. It's a private clinic, so you can come and get treatment there. And it has one of the most incredible patient experiences for people that are going through cancer. You can have your chemotherapy sitting in a garden looking at the Atlantic Ocean. Like you don't get that in most places. So, and I think that would probably help your treatment and recovery. And now we have a new cancer center that will open any day now. It was just built. And the designer for the Emirates airline first class cabins designed the treatment pods for chemotherapy in the new center. And we're about to renovate a third building, which is even more waterfront, if you can believe it's possible. It's the old dock. And we will be renovating that into a digital therapeutics institute, developing non-invasive therapeutics that have clinical evidence to manage, treat, and prevent chronic diseases. So this is very futuristic. So these are interventions that could be immersive rooms that have artwork all around you, immersive gaming, where you're maybe playing a game as part of your rehabilitation process, where you're moving your arms as part of the game, doing things with AR and VR and motion capture and robotics. So we have some really impressive technological interventions that we'll be bringing to the world. And also in that new center, we will also be treating patients. So we will also have a portion of the clinic for these types of chronic diseases.
We actually found each other because of an article you published on Nina's Notes, and you spoke about Portugal as a blue zone. There's a blue zone? Yeah.
Yes, a blue zone.
What is a blue zone, first of all? Just tell us what that is. So for people that don't know.
Yes, for people who don't know, blue zones are...
And I didn't know what it was. So
no?
I'm not trying to sound smart. I didn't know what it was until I read the article. So now so I learned what a blue zone was because of your article, by the way.
Well, good. I'm glad that I taught you something.
Thank you.
So blue zones are regions of the world that have the highest concentration of centenarians. And these are people that live to be 100 years old or older. And there are currently 5 blue zones in the world, and that's Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, and Nicoya, Costa Rica, and then, weirdly enough, Loma Linda, California, in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
and it really is. Upon moving here, I just took note that I see a lot of elderly people. They're out and about. They're walking, they're, like you mentioned, they're carrying their groceries. I see them getting out of the house, which actually, even this morning, I was like, that's so good that even if they're just leaving the house every day, I know I could get so consumed in my work, I don't leave the house. So seeing them out and about every day, like that's very important for socialization. And the movement, there's hills, there's kind of natural activity that you have to do in order to run those errands. That's very important. And there's also a lot of access to very healthy foods. We have, obviously we have a lot of coastline. We have a lot of fresh fish. There's a socialization. The Portuguese like to get together and have dinner together, host things at home, have you over to their place. And I think all of those are really core to a long and healthy life. And then I recently also read that in the last 10 years, the population of 100-year-olds in Portugal grew by 77%. Nicoya in Costa Rica is declared a blue zone. They also have a small population, but they only have like 800 people that are over 100, and their total population is 5 million. And we have 10 million people here and 3,000 100-year-olds. So maybe there's something there. But that got me thinking about, Portugal has a lot of these characteristics of some of these places. Like a lot of them have a lot of coastline, Japan, a lot of coastline, Italy, Greece, Costa Rica. And do we have a kind of a lot of those elements that make a blue zone? And if there is a documentary on Netflix, I recommend you, if you haven't watched it yet, I think you should. called like I think it's called like Living to 100, and it's the secrets of the blue zones. And they go through each of those 5 cities and interview the centenarians and try and understand what it is that they do in their daily lives that's keeping them so healthy. And then they boiled it down to kind of these 4 basic principles with 12 elements total. And so now we kind of have to look at Portugal like through that lens. Like, oh, do we check all of these boxes? Can we do it? And I think so. I think there's something there.
I mean, speaking of growing old, it is a great place to grow old. I mean, what would you say to people about growing old in Portugal? It's a good idea or not? And why?
I think it's something to really consider, because I think if you think mostly about the alternative, I imagine myself, okay, if I was in the United States and I'm growing old, I'm most likely in a suburb where I need to drive. Maybe I'm losing my vision, so my driver's license is at risk. I can't get around. The children are out of the house. There's not a lot of people around. The neighborhood is quieted down because everyone's getting a bit older. Like that just does not sound that exciting to me. And on the alternative, maybe you're living here and I gave Cascais as the example, which maybe we have better examples in Portugal. And so I'm curious, maybe where you live is a potential blue city. But maybe you're living in the city in Cascais and you're able to walk to the waterfront and walk down the steps, put your toes in the water, very grounding, earthy experience. You can walk, get your groceries. You don't need to go very far out of town to run any errands. You're friends with the people that own the shops on your street. And now I live across from this mini market. I know all the workers there. There's 2 restaurants down the street. If they see me with my umbrella coming out of my beach umbrella coming out of the house, they're like, oh, what beach are you going to? Oh, don't go to that beach, go to this beach, and giving tips. That is so nice. But I think that's something that Portugal offers a lot because of the friendliness of the people, and they're willing to talk and interact and smile at you and say hi as you walk by. I think there's a lot of that here that's really magical. Totally different than Berlin. I think in America, we do a lot of small talk. You'll be checking out your groceries and you'll chit chat. In Germany, not at all. That is not there. And here, there's a bit of chatting, at the grocery checkout. And also in Germany, they check your groceries so fast. It's almost impossible to bag it simultaneously. There's been articles written about how stressful this experience is to foreigners, because they literally just like rocket launch your groceries down the scanner. And here in Portugal, it's like everyone's taking their time. No one is in a rush. You can take as long as you want to bag your groceries, even if there's a queue of 20 people behind you. No one's going to get mad at you because you're bagging too slowly. But in Germany, you feel like you get a little bit. It's quite aggressive.
Yeah, aggressive bag checking.
Yeah,
that's something I want to look into.
You'll have to Google it. I swear. I think there was a Guardian article written about a woman that like cried after the grocery store experience in Germany. It's really intense.
What's one thing that you want people to remember and take away from our conversation? Just one thing.
I think the micro interactions, the amount of those micro interactions that you can have here, and that people will take the time out of their day to tell you all the great things about Portugal. I think that's what people need to remember.
Nina, a question we ask all of our guests. Portugal, the simple life. Why?
Portugal gives you a simple life because no one's in a rush ever. And that is really a relief. I think when you've been in a big city that is go, 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 everyone has their main job, their side job, and their passion project. And here people are they're living and they're taking the time to do that. So it helps to force you to slow down.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm going to let you call it.
That's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to the Simple Life.